Thank you for attending this press conference. Let me just say that right at the beginning, Guyana is anxiously awaiting the decision of GCOM to move forward. The fate of nearly 800,000 people and their lives have been put on hold in the past year because, as everyone would recognize, that we are in a state of limbo. First of all, we've had the no confidence motion, which determined that elections should be held within 3 months. And then since March 21st, we've had unconstitutional rule. And any country that has unconstitutional rule must have an impact on business and people's lives. The government is an important interlocutor in people's daily lives. And therefore, many people are uncertain as to how to engage with this government because we've made it clear that much of what they're doing would be illegal. In fact, most of what they're doing because the government is unconstitutional. So we have, in another part of the world, this would be described as a dictatorship in another part of the world. We have been a bit more generous in saying it's unconstitutional rule. But what you have had here is a coup d'etat by abdication of responsibility. The president argues conveniently that he is awaiting, first of all, he had to challenge the no confidence motion to test its legality. And when that was concluded definitively by the CCJ, they even then questioned what the CCJ ruling meant. But it is clear to all Guyanese when the CCJ said Article 106 was triggered. Now he's persisted with this excuse that he has to wait the GCOM making the decision, yet his minions at GCOM continue to slow the process down. And anyone, when the history of Guyana would be written, you will see how the commissioners at GCOM, particularly a particular group, the government commissioners and the former chairman, how they not just abdicated their responsibility, I believe committed a criminal act by not preparing for elections since December 21st last year. And even at this stage, they're persisting in going down a route that would delay the elections further, even at this stage. So we're anxiously awaiting GCOM, and they must understand too, the commission, that this country is on hold, basically. 800,000 people are waiting, and every day that passes by, for them it might be another day for 7 persons. But it's another stressful day for 800,000 people who don't know where we're going, one way or another. And therefore, the decision has to be made urgently. But we have seen some new developments now. So consistent with this government's proclivity to claim what the courts didn't say and read the judgments of courts. So Basil Williams was the first out of the paddock sometime last week, and he said that this Chief Justice's statement on the NRR was not an order. that the Chief Justice statement on the NRR is not an order. So whilst they're claiming victory about the House registration, the ruling the Chief Justice said as a form of verification, it is not unconstitutional as a form of verification. That the Chief Justice ruled also that house-to-house registration to remove people from the NRR, it would be unconstitutional. And obviously, that is what they're upset about. And that's why he said the Chief Justice's statement on the NRR is not an order. So clearly he started setting the tone of what was there to follow. So today I looked at the Chronicle and I saw several things here by the GCOM commissioner. I think Mr. Alexander was interviewed by the Chronicle. And they said Chief Justice Roxanne George had ruled that the ongoing house-to-house registration being undertaken by GCOM is within the confines of the Constitution and is therefore legal. True, that as a means of verification. But the Chief Justice ruled other things. So what I want to do is to tell you exactly from the judgment itself, from the ruling of the Chief Justice, which is now in the public domain, not the transcripts alone from what she read out, the oral judgment, but a written judgment. Paragraph 141. A reading of all the relevant provisions leads to the inevitable and ineluctable conclusion that GCOM does not have the discretion, without more, to remove the name of a person from the list of registrants or electors because such a person who was previously registered has not re-registered during a house-to-house registration exercise. So it said that GCOM doesn't have the authority to remove your name from the NRR, the list of registrants, nor from the voters list, electors, if you had registered before. So that is quite clear. GCOM doesn't have the authority to. You would recall that the reason for house-to-house registration was to deregister all Guyanese who had been registered before and create a new list. So that meant if you were registered before, if you didn't re-register, you were not going to be on the database for the future and you couldn't vote. The Chief Justice said you cannot. GCOM doesn't have the authority. Paragraph 161. GCOM would have no legal authority to remove or deregister such persons who are otherwise qualified unless such registration can be cancelled pursuant to Section 8, cancellation and alteration of registration, and Section 15, claims and objections of the NRR, and the regulations thereto as outlined above. These persons may have to return to their districts to vote, but their names cannot ipso facto be removed from the register of registrants, which removal would then disqualify them from and deprive them of their right to vote. To do so would be unconstitutional and therefore illegal. The Chief Justice said to remove people's name from the existing voters list if they do not register again would be unconstitutional and illegal. So therefore, house-to-house registration, as they were practicing it to start a new database to deregister people, is unconstitutional and illegal. That is clear. Paragraph paragraph 174. And you have the judgment, you go online, you can get it. This is to say, where persons are already registered, it would be unconstitutional again, notice the word, if they are removed for the sole reason that they now reside in another jurisdiction abroad, or, as I have pointed out, another part of the country vis-a-vis where they reside. As regards their place or district of registration in Guyana, where they would be able to vote. The same would apply if it's that they are simply not present for whatever reason when the registration officer enumerator visited or visits. Once they fulfill the criteria in Article 159.2, and you know what that means, 18 years and above, Guyanese, or a resident of the Commonwealth who has lived here for more than 1 year, and are already registered, they're entitled to remain so unless it is proven they are deceased or have become disqualified based on Article 159.3 or 159.4 and the Article 1 of the Constitution. 159.3 says on sound mind, and 159.4 says you're convicted of an elections offense 5 years before that. Those are the only two reasons. So 3 sections of the ruling point out, use the word unconstitutional and illegal for house-to-house registration to remove people's name from the voters list. But they keep persisting with this idea. The activity should have been brought to halt immediately. Immediately, because that is what they set out to do, to re-register everybody and create a new list. And you cannot do that now. They should have stopped it. But they keep persisting and argue now that, oh, we've already done 270,000 people, register them. So if you register of the 270,000, 265,000 were registered before. It's a total waste of time. It's just the 5,000 people, and we can ask Lowenfield, and I'll bet you for the next 2 months, he would not be able to tell us who the new registrants are, because they never collected only new registrants. They started re-registering everyone. So of the 270,000 there, it's a total waste of even if they go 300,000 now, or 500,000, they persist with the exercise. It's a waste of time. You're re-registering people that you cannot remove from the original list. You can't create a new list. Why re-register them? So I want to say to every Guyanese, once you're registered in the past, this is the Chief Justice's ruling that I'm reading directly from. You are wasting your time. Do not re-register. And any of the enumerators who've been continue to carry GCOM's lie that if you don't register, you can't get an ID card, you can't, the police will lock you up, etc. You should take their names down and record them saying that, so we can take action against them for misleading people. The exercise is illegal now as it was structured. It was never structured as a verification exercise. It was structured as a registration, re-registration to create a new list. That is illegal. So that is one. So let us talk a bit about, we've just discovered that the exercise started off with a statutory form that is different than the one in the law. Now, when you have, the laws have forms attached to them, statutory forms. And so when the one for the registration has a form that you have to fill out. The only way you can alter that form is if you have the Commission's approval and you return to the Parliament. But they altered the form in the absence of the Commission and never went back to the Parliament. So that questions everything they've done, apart from being unconstitutional. The forms that they have used now are not the statutory forms to start. They do the house-to-house registration. So that's another, somebody should be fired for that, because any of the data would be suspect now, illegally obtained, because they didn't use the statutory form. So I keep hearing now this third thing about, let us use, this is what I gleaned from Vincent Alexander's thing. He said, when asked what aspects of the ruling were discussed at the meeting yesterday, Alexander said there is only one aspect of the ruling to be discussed, and that is the question of the role of house-to-house registration. Why do you need to discuss that? You started off house-to-house using an illegal form to create a new list, and the Chief Justice has ruled that that's unconstitutional and illegal to do so. Secondly, the GCOM Commissioner said that the Chief Justice ruled that there should be an alternative to the use of what comes out of house-to-house registration. I never saw that anywhere in the Chief Justice's ruling. He further explained that the ruling stated that the house-to-house registration should be used for verification rather than the deletion of names from the list. The Chief Justice said house-to-house registration as a tool for verification is not unconstitutional. She never directed that it be used now. So this is precisely in paragraph 178 of the Chief Justice's ruling, what she said. Thus, whatever verification or revision exercise is undertaken to ensure a fair and credible election, whether house-to-house or otherwise, verification, and she made the point about claims and objections several times that we had used so many times for the last 4 elections. That's the method of verification. We never had house-to-house verification in the past 4 elections, but suddenly now they need it for this one to slow things down. You had claims and objections. So let me repeat that. Thus, whatever verification or revision exercise is undertaken to ensure a fair and credible election, whether house-to-house or otherwise, for the preparation of the list of electors for national and regional elections consequent on the no confidence motion, must be conducted in the context of the order of the CCJ of July 12, 2019, that the provisions of Article 106 immediately became engaged on the passage of no confidence motion on December 21st, 2018. This means that elections should have been held on March 21st, 2019, and that is within 3 months of the passage of the no confidence motion or such extended date as approved by 2/3 of all the members of the Assembly. Then she spoke about this is not a normal business cycle. So when Vincent Alexander goes to the media to say that the Chief Justice ordered that the data collected now through the illegal house-to-house exercise, which started off, and it's illegal from the perspective that they wanted to create a new database and they can't. He now says the Chief Justice ruled that the data must be used for verification. She never said that. You heard what she said, whatever form of verification. And she said the timelines matter. The timelines matter because it must be done in the context of the no confidence motion. So this is, I shudder to think what they are saying at the commission itself, because they will carry this judgment there of the Chief Justice, and I'm sure that they must have spoken to Basil Williams and generate a whole ton of extraneous things, misrepresenting court decisions and rulings as they're doing. So until now, Chronicle, not just Chronicle, but the other people many APNU people persist with this thing about house-to-house verification. This is what Chronicle says. The countrywide exercise is in keeping with the decision of the Commission of February 19, and in accordance, therefore, house-to-house registration is a new registration exercise, and all eligible persons must register, even if they were previously registered. And it says, upon the conclusion of this exercise, a new National Register of Registrants database, which is reflective of the current Guyanese population, will be created. Those two things the Chief Justice said clearly would be unconstitutional and illegal. Yet today, up to today, the Chronicle mentions these things. These are explicit that those people, even those who are previously registered, must re-register. Why do you have to re-register when your name cannot be removed? And that at the conclusion of this exercise, they're creating a new NRR. The Chief Justice said, no, you can't create, you can add to. You can use methods, different methods. Your claims and objection is one of those to add to the NRR, which has been done for the past 10 years and for 4 elections. So the misrepresentation continues. You cannot use any of the data collected for verification. I know sometimes people want to balance interests and all of that. The data is suspect. One, we believe that illegalities were committed, and we will get some details about that. Two, it was unscrutinized. The house-to-house exercise so far, when there is a role for scrutineers. Three, they use the illegal, not the statutory form, another form that would cause complications for GCOM itself. Four, it is time-consuming. It will take a long time to use this data, and the data is suspect. Why are we just hanging on? They just keep hanging on. There must be some reason why they want to use this data. And they can't even determine how many of the 270,000 are new registrants. So clearly, the GCOM must act with alacrity, recognizing that people are out there waiting. The enumerators are in a limbo. Some of them are going around. Guyanese people are in a limbo in the face of the commission said they are waiting on the Chief Justice's ruling. The Chief Justice's ruling, you can read it yourself. I showed 3 paragraphs which says house to house, the registration to remove people from the voters list if they don't re-register or they can't be found at home is illegal and unconstitutional. Why don't they stop it now? They should stop it immediately. And that's the only course forward, and to start claims and objections. It's a time-tested method. So this is something that you will keep hearing from the government side. They're totally untrustworthy. On the other hand, we hear, oh, the elections, and let me say something. Mr. Lowenfield has, and I don't want to say the secretary. Every time they speak, GCOM so far, until the appointment of the new chairperson, they have always presented timelines and narratives that coincide almost 100% with those coming out of Congress Place. Those coming out 100% out of Congress Place. And any timeline that Mr. Lowenfield produces now, I suspect might shift accord with what Congress Place wants and must be thoroughly interrogated by the commission. The timeline will be suspect until thoroughly interrogated by the commission. They will, if they can do something in 1 day, they will add 3 days. They would say, we need 3 days to do it. We've seen it before. So, because from the very beginning, they started on this trend. So we have to keep pressing. I think they've had enough time now to make this decision. And the decision has to be consistent with the ruling of the court, and consistent also, not with what they want, with what the Chief Justice said and the CCJ said, that the elections ought to be held within 3 months. Within 3 months. We are already into unconstitutional rule. So the new narrative is they want elections by December, but they're not sure. Granger's still waiting. It could be next year, could be the following year, whenever GCOM decides. The narrative is they determine, they say on one hand, we're waiting on GCOM to decide, but going around the country and telling people, WPA has said it, and they're the new mouthpiece of APNU, and I saw Garrido Low saying, oh, we are told that elections would be in December. It's probably to give people a sense of comfort. I don't trust them. Even the December date is suspect for me. We believe elections could be held long before December, and if you pursue the claims and objection, which is the only way forward now, claims and objection, to go immediately to claims and objections and start preparing for elections. And all the people who registered, rather than go and try to find out which one is new, etc., you create the window for them to re-register the 3,000-4,000 maybe new registrants out of the 270,000. The 270,000, don't be misled by that figure. That is just nonsense, pure nonsense. The people are already on the list. They can't be removed. Just a waste of time. So let me go through a couple of more things. I've seen a new trend now. I said before the last time, the entire party and membership of the WPA is out in the field now. Imagine, I would not have thought that the WPA would descend in blatant racism. A party of Walter Rodney, who sought to bring people together, a national leader. I know as a boy how we looked up to Walter Rodney, what he spoke about, his teaching, his books, and everything else when he had meetings. And this cabal now has taken upon themselves now to transform his party. They talk about extrajudicial killing under the PPP and don't have the decency to say that their leader was murdered by PNC and that an international commission of inquiry found that to be so. And they even ignored it in Parliament. Rupert Rupnine and people like Hines and Agonse and all of the others who are Rodneyites don't have the decency to talk about that. The reign of terror, even the killing of their leader, the leader of that party by PNC. Now they keep talking about extrajudicial killing. I'll come to that in a moment. But what is interesting is they say, we vote for the PNC. We know they perform badly. This coalition performed badly. We have no guarantee that they will perform better in the future, but vote for them. That is coded racism because they defend Afro-Guyanese interests. What Afro-Guyanese interests does this cabal defend? Afro-Guyanese have suffered more under this government than any government in any period in our history. Under this government here. Most. And the thing is that look at people who are working, the thousands of lost jobs. The thing that they dismantle all the social safety nets. People don't have a future now. Try to take away their lands. And guess who? When they speak about Afro-Guyanese interests, they're talking about themselves. Because if you look at Ogunse, he never had a job before, but he's probably earning maybe $700,000 a month now. The same thing with Trotman, and they're from another generation. In their 60s and 70s, not young people. That whole group, Clive Thomas, everybody, earning over $1 million a month. They're talking about themselves and about the few who are getting privileged access. But what about ordinary people? They're not defending Afro-Guyanese interests. They suddenly recognize now that they need people to vote for them, so they've gone back to the communities with new promises. But they themselves said, we can't guarantee you that they will look out for you in the future. But just vote for them because they're our own. That's pure racism. And I don't know if the ERC doesn't see this. The ERC doesn't see this. So they spoke about the enormous challenges they inherited in 2015. The challenges were so enormous that the country was so bankrupt that the first act was to take a youth salary increase for themselves. We were so bankrupt, we didn't have money, that the ministers took this youth salary increase for themselves, and then all the other perks. You know, so I saw Keith Scott bodyguard got shot, and I'm really sorry that happened. But under the PPP, ministers didn't have bodyguards. And we had 17 of them. They have 27 of them. We had a driver, and the minister used to sit in his car. Now they have a driver, vehicle, bodyguard. Every one of these ministers, they use sirens. Ministers never use a siren. I went up to the races. I see a number of sirens blaring past with ministers. And then they change the per diem policy. They change the housing allowance. We are paying for their medical care abroad now. We have an insurance scheme where the taxpayers have done this. All their allowances have increased enormously. But they inherited a big problem. Well, you know what they inherited. You saw somebody posted in the Bank of Guyana report how much money they had in the gold reserve, where it is now. That's what they inherited. Nearly $20 billion of gold reserve. It's down to $500 million. They had over $5 billion at the Forestry Commission. Now it's bankrupt. They're looking to the Treasury to pay the salary over there. The Housing Fund had $8 billion. You remember they used to say there's slush fund? They squandered it out. The same thing with the Lotto. They never transferred the money. The Forestry, the GGMC, they practically took the entire reserve of GGMC and transferred it into the Treasury and used it up. That is what they found. And this guy says, and it was the fastest growing economy in this region. Suddenly, it's slowed tremendously, and Jordan hanging on to some figures that are driven only by the oil and gas sector when all the other sectors are in trouble. But WPA speaks about what they inherited. They inherited all the East Coast Road that they are doing nowadays, the West Coast Road, the East Bank Road, almost every single project. I saw Patterson now talking about Marriott feasibility study. I'll come to Patterson just now. But that's it. So they said the coalition gets credit for war against narco-trafficking. So I heard a lot about they're going to go after the Sara, and Soku will go after the people with tall buildings. You recall? They were saying all these, go back and look at the early statements that people who were under the PPP who were doing tall buildings, who were corrupt, or were into drug dealing. We set up SOCU as the enforcement arm of the FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit. SARA was set up by them to go after assets. How many drug dealers have they seized assets from? Or have they filed a case against in money laundering? Not a single one. Not a single person. The biggest hauls have been made overseas. Even now we have members of the government whose family crawled through the airport with kilograms of drugs. If that had happened under the PPP, we'd never hear the last of it. Every article in the newspapers would have put that at the end. the brother of Jagdeo or somebody else was seen caught with kilograms of cocaine abroad. That never surfaced. So they're talking about narco trafficking. Next thing they get credit for implementing a sugar policy. Sugar policy is 7,000 people lost their jobs. This year we're losing $1 billion from sugar. They're selling out all the assets. They transfer all the assets to NISIL. Gaisuco is in a big war with NISIL. They're secretly selling out all the assets. They install some of their cronies to sell out their assets, like at Rose Hall, etc., to themselves. They took money. They borrowed $15 billion. Next thing we heard, they're spending now 15, 17, and over 30 billion total bond. They got 17 disbursed to them. They started building swimming pools and stuff for weekend parties just here, converting the facilities. That's their sugar policy. 7,000 people who had jobs, and another 4,000 who rely on those people for employment lost their jobs. So that is the fact, and they end phantom era killings. So why would this phantom era killing? There's no phantom that killed Walter Rodney, but they're not talking about that. The phantom era killing, why doesn't President Granger set up the commission of inquiry? He should start off with the lawyers who were recruited every single time that we caught somebody who was involved in the massacre of people. Agricola, Bartica, Lusignan, etc. Check who the lawyers were, and it tells you a story. Check who used to visit. That is what they're worried about. The last people who should talk about phantom era killing should be the WPA. Read the book published by UC Quayana about what started the killings in Buxton. Who helped the criminals take over that community and irreparably damage the reputation of that village. That was a proud village coming from slavery, the end of slavery, to all of, it always had a reputation for producing some of the best sons and daughters of Guyana. And that village always had a proud history, Tipperary Hall, etc. They converted it, took over the village, allowed the criminals to take over the village. And we didn't write about it. You should read who wrote about that. UC Quayana from the WPA. And they talk about phantom era killing. So this is a set of apologists now. It irks me that they're so, I know they're insignificant. They have totally in the whole country 5 members. And they said they would hold APNU to their promises. Imagine these 5 that I just called will hold APNU to their promises in the future. But they're doing it for perks for themselves. But it's just so people don't have a sense of shame or decency anymore. A sense of shame or decency anymore in politics. How could you be like this? And now they're saying the WPA again wishes to congratulate GCOM for not bowing to pressure and for keeping the house-to-house registration timeline within the ambit of the Constitution and the CCJ guideline. Imagine they said the house-to-house registration must be kept within the ambit of the CCJ guideline and the Constitution. You should have had elections in March. Now, September 18, the field exercise of the house-to-house registration was slated to complete in October 20th. If they use the data now, we're into next year, and they're saying this. And then the ruling is hopefully the final blow. They're talking about the Chief Justice's ruling against the PPP's effort to get the court to become unnecessarily entangled in the country's politics. Who brought in the courts into this all? It was this APNU and the same corrupt AFC, not AFC, they're two the same too, WPA cabal. when they went to challenge the no confidence motion. They refused to accept what they did the night before. They challenged it on the spurious grounds that 34 is the majority of 65, and made us the laughing stock of the world. And then they said, APNU restore a sense of pride in Ghanese. They're giving out our whole country to the oil companies and to foreigners. We became the laughing stock of the region with those arguments at the CCJ. And we're now we restore pride to Guyana. This is what we have, what I call the reworking of the narrative, lying once again to people. One thing the people should ask them, the same WPA and the AFC when they come around, where were you 4 years ago? Where were you all these years? Why didn't you come out and make all the promises or fulfill the ones you had? Why is it only after the no confidence motion you're busy running around now and saying, give us a chance because, you know, we can't promise you we'll do better, but give us a chance, vote back again for us. That is it. So when they come to your community, say to them, respect the Constitution, and chase them out too, wherever they come. I see they were in Linden. They had a massive crowd of 3 plus those who went up there. The people who went, that 5 plus 3, I think. That's the maximum numbers they get, the WPA. The same thing goes for the AFC. Ramjatan, again, you know my feeling about Ramjatan. The latest thing about Ramjatan, he said the AFC will get 12 seats. 12 seats. Imagine these people don't know they got slaughtered just at the local government elections. They will get now 12 seats. Obviously, he is saying that because I heard they're renegotiating this Commingsburg Accord. So I think he is talking up how their strength, their electoral strength, to get more space in the coalition. Well, they should just go to Region 5 and Region 6 where the people ran them away. At the meetings, they had like 3 persons, 5 persons, 15, and they walk with an entourage of like, on average, always 15 persons. The officials at the meeting are more than the people. In fact, the junior people said, they still call them junior, GIS. The DPI, yes. By the way, the DPI now doing, I saw something for CGX, they've started doing PR for CGX. Since we said that the extension to CGX is illegal, they started doing public relations for CGX now, a private company. But the DPI, some of the staff told me that at the meeting, they don't have people to take pictures of. So they're going around trying to find a couple of people to take pictures. The staff, this DPI staff and the security and the others who go around with the ministers are sometimes all the people at the meeting, total numbers at the meeting. So if they're trying to get more out of APNU, that's APNU's business. But Ramjatan may be talking about 12 seats for the whole coalition, not for AFC. Let me quickly go through a couple of other issues. So in this season 2, Trotman, imagine Trotman goes to Campbellville and he takes some residents in Campbellville now to meet the PPP councillor for the area, Dimitri Ali, to say the people have not seen their councillor. Dimitri Ali was elected a councillor in November last year. He's been in Campbellville several times. I know that because I asked him for reports. But Trotman disappeared from the ground 4 years later. 4 years later, he showed up. 4.5 years later, he shows up in Campbellville to tell the people that your woes are because of Dimitri Ali. You're not meeting Dimitri Ali. They control the central government. They control City Hall. They have 23 of the 30 councillors. And you go near for a big PR show. He goes to Campbellville to say, I'm concerned about you now. and I'll lead your delegation to City Hall. Then they suspended the sitting there so Trotman could pontificate. And somebody should just say, where were you the last 4 years? Didn't you think Campbellville was important in that time? So it just shows you how dishonest, totally dishonest these people are. And Freedom Radio may get a call from the Broadcast Authority because we can't say that Granger lies anymore. Because even if he lies, that's disparaging your political opponent. Well, he lies a lot, and Trotman lies, and a lot of them lie. So I hope that the Broadcast Authority will recognize that if politicians lie, we have to call them out. We have to call them out. And that's infringing on free speech. That's not regulation. So we've seen that happening. And more of it. Felix says thousands of Haitians leaving Guyana illegally for Brazil. Felix. So guess what Felix said? The PPP has been saying the people are registered, but they're leaving. And they're leaving, the Brazilians have the number, and the number is in the story too. 6,900 odd Haitians, 25 Haitians went into Brazil legally at the border. So they're leaving Guyana. But these people are going through Carasabay, Aishalton, Latem, different places. And therefore, we don't have the figures. So they go into Brazil, on Brazilian side of the border, 6,900 are recorded as entering Brazil. And on our side, leaving Guyana, we have 15. So he says they're going through all the places, Aishalton, Carasabay, different parts. If you know where Carasabay and Aishalton and Latem are, they're hundreds of miles apart. Not 100, maybe 60, 70 miles apart. So guess what happens in Brazil? When they go into Brazil illegally there, the Brazilians catch them and bring them back to Latem, to the post there to go and register. Doesn't it sound nonsensical? I don't mean that seriously, because you're looking at me like it's seriously. It's serious. It is pure garbage. Pure garbage. The people are going in. There's one port of entry into Brazil. The people leave Latem, go across, they enter Brazil, and they register there. They're not running across the border at Carasabay, because if they run across the border, they will not be recorded by the Brazilians. They would not. And then you wouldn't have had 6,925 being recorded by the Brazilian for this year alone. It's pure nonsense. And this guy, and I wonder why he's so touchy about it. Because we know the gangs that are operating. And I wonder how many people are compromised. That's why they're turning a blind eye. At least, if the people are going into Brazil, your exit figure should match their entry figure. Because they have to leave our side, through the border, and go over and be stamped in on the other side. Your exit figure should match the Brazilian entry figure. And so this is a serious abdication of responsibility. And I wonder what's there to hide. I think I know what, because it's a big money-making thing too. But we believe that some people remain here illegally, like in other country, but the Haitians are not to be blamed for this. I made it clear. Haitians come here, many want to come through. They should be given, if he knows this, they should be given in-transit visas. Because if they're going into Brazil legally, then they should be given transit visas to Guyana. And if they give them transit visas, then it will cut out the racket. because they can come in legally and enter Brazil legally. They don't have to be chaperoned, taken to a hotel, clandestinely be moved around in vehicles. Children, I've seen some videos of children walking to the border, like going to the Mexican border. They don't have to go through all that suffering. You stamp them in as people who are transiting the country, and then if they're leaving there, when they go legally, they're leaving because the Brazilian side has the numbers, then they enter there. Our stats would look well, and the people don't have to hide or pay anyone to help them. They don't have to do that. But now they don't want that. They make it look like you can come here, you got to come here to get into Guyana. You need this two-way entry and exit visa back from Guyana, out the way. And in that is big scope for illegality. So don't listen to Felix. Anybody who takes Felix seriously would be in serious trouble. And then the last issue I want to talk about, I talk about two issues. I don't want to deal with Patterson. Patterson needs to answer about the $9,000. He's hiding from it. 9,000 US that got paid into his private account from China. And how, and I notice he's talking about the 188 million power plant. You've heard Patterson 10 times before speak about all of these plans for the electricity sector. They even went out to a tender for a gas power plant, then they shifted it, they canceled it. They were talking about negotiating the wind farm with one of their cronies. Then they talk about solar. Nothing is moving, they're just gaffing. Patterson, if we had listened to him before, we had already had and believed him, the road to let him would have been paved. 3 budgets he announced it, we're starting this year. Patterson talks a lot, and behind that facade of them doing something that stinks of corruption. We should examine in his ministry all the single source contracts that he's been given out. His role in the 2 major contracts in GPL that we believe are corrupt. 2 major contracts. His role in the Demerara Harbor Bridge, his personal role. His role in collecting that $9,000 from the Chinese company. I can go down a long list. What he did in Berbice, the East Bank Road. And so we gotta, so on the other hand, I see the airport again, surfaced, and excuses again. Not addressing the fundamental issue of the airport. Why did you alter? He keeps saying we have not altered, but it's a lie. He's altered the airport. I believe we're getting about 30 million US less based on adjustments. But I believe that there is corruption there too. So his response to Edgehill when Edgehill raised this, well, there's no feasibility study for Marriott. How many times can we have an incompetent minister like this? I could take you online and show you the feasibility study. 2 were done. And Marriott is one of the most profitable things. He said there is no feasibility study for the Berbice Bridge. Right at this press conference, I showed you a feasibility study. You remember that, with financial projections, all of this. The Skeldon factory, if you go online now, you will see the Tate and Lyle. They have a website which says that the government of Guyana asked them to prepare the study. And today's paper, he writes that there are no feasibility study for any of these things. But remember, he lied in Parliament too. When he gets cornered and his wrongdoings are exposed, he lashes out at everything, even things that don't make sense and that have been answered before. So that is Patterson. Everyone is looking. And then on the oil and gas sector, I noticed that Tullow has now said that they are a frontier company again. So 1% recovery in the royalty, license in line, time story, with frontier exploration standards. And really, these people think that we're stupid as Guyanese. They really think we're stupid. How many times are we going to give frontier advantages? With ExxonMobil, they were the first who came here. You can argue that case. But the Tullow contract was signed in January of 2016, after we knew that we had oil in commercial quantities, and you had about 3 billion barrels of reserve out there, proven reserves. How can you get frontier conditions when the whole basin had been de-risked? Because you can claim that before the finding of oil, that, oh, we are just there to explore, nobody knows what you're going to find. But after you find, you make a major find, then you can't claim frontier standards anymore. You've had a major find, everybody. Had we put this out to tender, had we tendered this block, Guyana probably would have raised maybe 50, 60 million US dollars. Would have raised this, that they got for free after the oil. Because if you put it to tender before anybody find oil, you were not getting any takers. Nobody was coming into Guyana at that time. We were practically very generous trying to get someone. But the moment you find oil, everybody wants to be here. Everyone wants to be here. And had they put this out to tender, maybe we would have gotten about 50, 60 million, maybe more US dollars. They got it for free and now claiming frontier exploration standards. They started their work after. This contract was signed after we found oil, several months after we had proven reserves. So really, these people are taking advantage of us. But with this government, they will do so. They'll continue to do so. Because all we hear are platitudes from this government. And now I see ExxonMobil going to Canada. They can go to Canada to say 1,357 Guyanese benefiting from oil-related jobs. Why not 1,356 or 1,358? When they do these specific numbers, you know that we're going to probably find again that the person who sells them banana at the market is included in this. You remember the last time when they released their local content, what they were the shopping at the border market was part of the local content too. So if they can go to Canada, Exxon is trying to, in this period of the no confidence vote, etc., these companies should not be out there peddling some of the lies of this government. Peddling the lies. And they only know why they're doing that, peddling some of these lies. But why can't they come to hold a press conference? Exxon should hold a press conference in Guyana, face our local media. If you can go to Canada and send your people to speak in Canada, it's our oil, it's our country. You can't hold a press conference here and take questions about this and prove to them that Guyanese are getting all these jobs, but they will hide from the media here, would not hold a press conference here. I don't know when last they held a press conference here, if they ever did, to answer all these questions. But go to Canada to tell a forum there how many people you're employing. This is disrespect for us. Total disrespect for Guyana. And it's part of their propaganda too. They should stay away from all of the lies. They collaborate with this energy department to continue to peddle lies to Guyanese people. Almost make me believe that this is all political when you see who the people are with them in Canada. It's Carwin Holland and some others who are, so they will now carry some of these PNC activists or they show up at these places to lie to the Guyanese in Canada. So I hope that they will treat us with the same respect that they have the Guyanese here, who live here, and to go to Canada and talk about this. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. What is a realistic date, Mr. Jagdeo, for elections?
Realistic date? I think long before the end of the year. Definitely not December. I think before the end of the year. Clearly, now with the shifting everything is, I believe, we discussed this. I saw the commissioners representing the People's Progressive Party worked out a timeline. And I'm saying this for the first time because we've always stuck with, we have stuck with the September 18th because that's a constitutional date. But we know the government is unconstitutional and it would be impossible now, given that the decision has not been made to hold elections by September 18th. So I've seen a timeline worked out by our commissioners, which has, would have, with all of the processes being followed, so that you don't cut corners, elections towards the latter part of October.
Okay, you just said to allow us for taking advantage of us. I know last week you criticized the fact that we have to pay for the royalty, but does your critique extend to the 1% royalty?
Yeah, because if the new standard is 2% non-recoverable, right? If the new standard is 2% non-recoverable, why in this case it's 1% and recoverable? You understand what I'm saying? It should be, if it could go from 2 to even higher, that's why the new model contracts in the future will not, no other company should get what Exxon got. We made it clear. And Exxon got, Tullow got even better terms than Exxon in relation to the royalty. So we're arguing that key issues like royalty, local content policy, the taxation, these are important. Ring fencing for future contracts, these are important aspects that have to be clearly defined. Okay?
How much could people expect of PPP government to review in terms of current contracts?
That is why we made it clear that we'd have a new model PSA that will look into all these elements. I can't tell you what percentage now because that would not be, it would not be a proper thing to do unless you have the total package on the table, on the total package on the table, but a package that allows Guyana to get significantly more. So if you say you increase the royalty to a figure higher than 2, then you may not want to adjust something else because you're taking revenue off the top of the company. So you have to, that's why you can't be specific. I just gave you the areas where we'd have to look at. The relinquishment provision we'll have to look at. The control of gas, the taxation policy, royalty, ring fencing, local content. All of these are elements that require clear positions on.
Speaking about the GFON and the realistic timeline of your commissioners, was this timeline presented by the commissioners to GFON?
I don't think they really had an opportunity. I don't want to talk about what took place at the meeting because I think all the parties, they're in the discussion. But clearly, you heard the points I made earlier about elections and how we see various aspects of what decisions should be made now. So we believe if the GCOM goes immediately to claims and objection period, to allow those the few thousand who new registrants of this 270,000, maybe 2,000 to 3,000 of them who would first-time registrants to register, plus the others who were not registered around the country. And you move immediately to that, and then you can achieve, I've seen the timeline, you can achieve, if you do that now, like say they start on Monday with the claims and objection, you could easily, or even by Wednesday if they have time, they need to prepare, you can achieve end October.
If by the end of August, if all of this is complete by the end of August, we could get an election by October month end?
Yeah, yes. I believe that if they move now, we could have an elections early. The thing is that's why I don't understand. In the face, they asked for the ruling of the Chief Justice. It's quite clear for the whole of Guyana that the exercise can be used. The data from the exercise is suspect now, based on the form, and it's not scrutinized. And to use that data now, how do you separate those? They can't manually now sort, they gotta go back and ask, are you a first-time registrant? Or did you register before? Because if you register before, your name would already be there. If they go and input back your name now, then you have your name twice on the database. Remember, they can't touch the database. The Chief Justice said, you can't alter this only by adding names. You can't remove people unless disqualified by the Constitution. And so it will create headache for us. I suspect the PNC wants this activity. Their scrutineer is on the ground. So what the country is doing, they're paying for PNC grassroots work. So the GCOM enumerators are going around with the PNC scrutineers, and they're collecting information on everybody. So later, they can know who has not been registered and stuff like that. They know the names of the people and stuff. And they can use it for their campaign. They can target their campaign to those areas because they're collecting a lot of data from people. A lot of data. This is helping the PNC campaign. I think that was the purpose of the exercise, because I think they found that when the last 2 cycles of continuous registration, people did not want to go out because they're disillusioned with the government. So therefore, they're rushed in this now. So GCOM and the chairperson has to ensure that GCOM is not paying for the political work or the taxpayers for APNU, contrary to the law. And that this verification is the Chief Justice has mentioned any other form. And you know what the form we had been using, claims and objections, for 10 years. Nobody had a problem with that form. That form is not unconstitutional, yet I don't know why they're not choosing it. And it's the shortest path to early elections.
But we had Mr. Alexander yesterday say that the claims and objections can be used to sanitize this. Can't be used.
What is his sanitize? Yes, which is pure nonsense too. His idea about sanitizing lists is that the house registration cannot sanitize lists too. The Chief Justice just said that you cannot remove the people who have migrated from Guyana. You can't remove people if you haven't found them. You can't remove people if they refuse to register. How are you going to sanitize, so-called sanitize? The list was sanitized in the last elections, and this same Vincent Alexander was defending the list. But now he needs to sanitize it. It's a pure nonsensical word meant to create the impression in the PNC base that the list is flawed, therefore it needs sanitizing. The list is not flawed to need sanitizing. And imagine, Marcel, if you claims and objections allows you to register new people to add to the database. 2, it allows you to you can remove dead people through the objection period. They can remove dead people from there too. And you can change your address, etc., your name, where you are, etc. That's what is being done. So, in no variant, not claims and objections, nor house-to-house registration, can you remove the name of any voter who has already been registered and who have not lost their qualification, the constitutional qualification. So you can recognize it's pure nonsense he's talking, pure nonsense. And it's designed to create an impression, oh, the list is bad, we got to do house to house to sanitize it. But how you sanitize it, so-called sanitize it, if you can't remove the names of people? Because you didn't find them. They wanted to sanitize a lot of us. That's what they wanted. They wanted to sanitize a lot of us from the list. And so when election day come, a lot of us would have been sanitized and we wouldn't have had the right to vote. But then, thankfully, the ruling thwarted their plan to sanitize us out of voting. And that's what they're in a little panic mode over there. In a little panic mode. So, but imagine if he says this nonsense in the public domain and is not afraid that people will take him up about it. Just imagine what he's saying in the closed meetings at GCOM. I wouldn't like to be the chairman now, chairperson, because to have to listen to this sort of thing. Imagine if you in the public domain could talk such patent nonsense. You know, what are you doing in private meetings?
What do you think the accepting of mid-December elections date?
Why mid-December? Kwame McCoy answer that for me. So, why mid? It seems as though every time PNC gets what it wants. So PNC says December, we must go to December now. Now, the Chief Justice, the CCJ said, no, the provisions of Article 106 engage, elections have to be held in 3 months. Imagine they should have been ready by now, but 3 months from now, it would be still in early November. Yes, exactly.
So do
So you accept November?
No, I didn't accept. I said the 3 months is not that the 3 months the Constitution says, not how long 3 months, 3 months, how long they need to prepare, is the Constitution gives you an outside limit of 3 months.
Yeah, I'm asking about your...
I'm telling you, my thing is I believe in October is a good timeline because they worked that out. The commissioners sat and they worked at this and showed how without compromising any quality, we can achieve it in end October.
So do you still maintain to your supporters that they should boycott?
Yes, but what do you think you should say to the supporters, having read and listened to this judgment? Not just supporters, but Guyanese. They're leading Guyanese up a gum tree. When people have recognized what this APNU has done to them, and GCOM, I don't want to see the backlash because this is a useless exercise they've started. And they wasted billions of dollars of our money for a useless exercise, re-registering. You sit in your hammock or wherever you are, your rocker chair, and tell them, leave my place now. And if they only threaten anything or tell you anything, just make a note of it, any enumerator. It means that they are acting contrary to the law, what the Chief Justice ruled. Nobody should register. Okay.